dealing with understanding the what of giving. Okay? In order to be able to do that, I said, okay, I'm going to start you out like this. I know we're wondering what these bananas up here for. I know we got to be wondering what these bananas up here for. But don't worry about that. We're going to get to it. We'll get to it. We'll deal with those bananas here in a minute. But I want to tell you about some 30-some odd years ago. God blessed me tremendously, and I didn't know it. Some 30 odd years ago, God brought this woman in my life that would change my life forever. That's Miss LaTanya Brown. That's her maiden name. That's her maiden name. She has a sister, we call her the Brown Girls. But some 30 odd years ago, she came into my life, changed my life forever. God brought her, and she was a vision of God's beauty in his hand, in the genius hand. And I tell you, I love her then, I love her today. And when God brought her to me some 30 odd years ago, I was at college during this time, going to college. And when I met her, I knew one thing, that I was going to have to make some type of financial sacrifices. I knew that there was going to be some type of changes that I had to make in my financial structure. See, I was living in Kilgore, Texas, and she was in Nacogdoches, Texas. And I was going to college there in Kilgore. I was going to college there in Nacogdoches. But when I wasn't in Nacogdoches, Texas, I would be leaving, going home. There were some things I had to do because I wanted to be next to her. I wanted to be in her presence. I wanted to be around her. So there were some things I would do, and those things were I would have to make phone calls to her. And back then, it was long distance. You might not know what that is today. But it was long distance charges that would be incurred. And see, there were financial things that was going on in my life. Now, there was other things like you had to pay gas money to get back to Nacogdoches in order to see this woman whom I wanted to be with and who I wanted to be in her presence. So in order to be able to do that, I had to make sacrifices. And some of those sacrifices, I would beg even my mama for some money sometimes, mama. I would even borrow if I have to, or work overtime if I have to, because I wanted to be in her presence. I felt she was worth it. I felt it was necessary for me to be in her presence, to be around her, to be in her sight. Because I would rush back wanting to take her places, some of the finest restaurants, so that she could go back and tell her friends about where I would take her. Some of the best, like Taco Bell. Make a disease. Whataburger was always a good one that we would go to. And then I knew after I had taken her to these fine cuisines that she would rush back and tell her friends about the things that I had done with her. Because I felt like she was worth it. I felt that way about her. Friends, if we only understand how amazing God is, we can only understand that God is worth it. See, when we want to be in the presence of God and we feel that God is worth it, we'll make some sacrifices. Because every relationship that you have has financial implications. See, when somebody's worth it, you'll make the sacrifice. You'll beg, you'll borrow, you'll work overtime in order that you may be able to be in their presence. In order that they can feel they're worthy, to show them you want to be around. See, if you understand how great God is, you'd want to make those sacrifices too. You'd want to do whatever it takes to be able to give in his presence. Whatever it takes. We get into Malachi. He was telling them, he says, look, I told you last week, God has paved the way. He's opened up the path so that you can come into the court and be in his presence. He said, but the problem with Caleb, you didn't want to go all the way in. That was the problem. And he says, what happens in verse 8 says, you stepped part of the way, but you wouldn't go all the way. And he says, what you did was you took the tithe and you took the offering. And he says, that's what you kept from being able to walk into the presence of God. Was God not worthy? You didn't want to be around him? What was the problem, Malachi is asking? He wants to know, what's the issue? See, so we're trying to understand, well, the what is it, what we should give? What does that look like? Tell us what then we should give. Well, I'm going to take you like this. First, there's a giving standard. I'll say there's a giving standard. See, what if I was to tell you that God has established that standard, and that standard is the tithe? That's what he's telling. Malachi is telling the people. He's telling the people that God has established a standard in which you are to bring, and he says that standard you are to bring is tithes to God. Now, what is a tithe? A tithe is 10%. We all know that 10% that's what he said that he believes is the standard, the benchmark of what he said should be given unto God. He said that's the goal. He said that's what you're to do. That's what he was telling the people there in Malachi, is that, hey, you were to bring 10%. And he was saying you're to bring this rhythmically and constantly before God. See, and to be able to give rhythmically and constantly means every month, every week, or every year, however you decide to do your giving, you give it unto God. And Malachi was telling them you to bring 10%. Now he says bring your whole tithe. That's what Malachi was saying. And that's what Malachi is defining as the standards. That's what he's defining. Now let me tell you how most people give. Most people decide on their giving in one of three ways. They look at their finances, and they said they're going to decide to give God what they think is enough. That's how most people do. Most people look at their checkbooks, and they say, well, I think this is about right, what God should receive, and this is what I'm going to give him. Not going to give him any more, not going to give him any less, but I think this is about right. So this is what I'm going to give unto God. Malachi was addressing this problem with the people because they were not willing to bring the tithe. So Malachi would say, you're giving God just what you think you should bring before him as an offering. So this is what they were doing. So Malachi began to address that. So that's one way that most people give. Number two is most people give out of what's left. See, they decide, they tally up their bills, they've looked at everything, and they say, this is what I have remaining, and this is what I'm going to give God. I'm going to give God what's left over. Usually one of three ways. They decided, I've tallied it up, and this is what I'm going to give God, his leftovers, and this is what's going to be presented before God. And we see an example of that in the Bible with Cain and Abel. You guys remember that story. Cain killed Abel. But then we found out there was a problem with Abel's sacrifice. What was the problem? Abel was giving leftovers. I'm sorry, Cain. Cain killed Abel, so the problem was he was giving leftovers. That was the problem. And so we see an example of that. And most people, the other one is most people give through inspiration. So they give based on what they think God is deserving of. They give either out of leftovers or they give on inspiration. Now see, when we give off inspiration, we're giving from the perspective that, hey, God, you've done something good. You blessed us really well this month, this year. And so we're going to, in essence, we're going to give you a good tip for a job well done. That's out of inspiration. So because you've been good to us, God, therefore we're deciding to tip you for your services. Yeah. Those are typically the way people give. They usually give in one of those three ways. They decide what they think God should have, decide what's left over, or they give from an inspiration, a tip under God. Well, a tip is better than nothing. You know, because we've had waiters before and we really didn't want to tip them. And when we go to buffets, I don't think we leave tips, do we? And we get fed well. But I don't believe we leave tips. But in this case, he said, we give out of inspiration. We give God some type of tip. Now, understanding the tithe is the tithe of suggestion. Is God simply telling them, look, I want you to tithe, and he's going to knock on my door, Tim, this is my suggestion to you? Or is it because God is God? And that we serve God, and God can set the standard. And whatever that standard is, God has decided to set it. And he says it's a tithe, and that's what we should give. He says, because I'm God, that's the only reason we need. He said, I'm God, you are my people. And from my people, I expect, he said, a tithe. That's what Malachi writes here. And so when he writes this, we have to understand when we go to God and say, well, why would you even want us to do this, God? You guys remember Job, and he asked this question. God responded to Job, and he said, did you create the oceans? Did you create the sea? Do you know where the wind blows, Job? Did you do any of those things, Job? Well, if you did not, Job, how is it you're going to ask me? So we see an example. We see an example of that. So if we give anything less than 10%, we have to understand it's not a tithe. It's giving is good. Here's what you need to bring when you come to God. Here's what you need to bring. And so Malachi was telling them, what do you need to bring? He said, you need to bring your tithe. So, okay. So then how do you know what to tithe? So some people say, well, should you tithe off the net? Should you tithe off the gross? All of us saying we need to tithe off the net, right? I understand, but that would be less. But you know, they say if you do it off the net, you get a net blessing. You do it off the gross, you get a gross blessing. You've heard that before. So how you do that is up to you. But let me explain, because I want you to really just understand things. Because understanding does a lot. But see, during that time, they would tithe 3 times. See, one was the Lord's tithe. They would give that. The festival tithe, they would give that at the sanctuary. Then they would also give a tithe to the poor every 3 years. They would give that as well. And these tithes were meant to do things such as take care of the poor. So that's the reason they would give those tithes. They would also give a tithe that would help take care of the sanctuary and things of that nature. So they would give these tithes, and 10% would go to the Levites and the priests. They would give that tithe as well. So all of these tithes were calculated up, and this was their system or their way to be able to take care of those that were around them. So in order to be able to do this, this is why they were tithing. Well, today, we don't have that system and structure in place according to our culture. No. We have our social welfare, our social security, things like that are taken out of our checks. And because they are, that system is in place, which helps take care of those that are poor and less able. We have that structure in place. Is that we take something, that we believe, and we say, God, this is what I'm doing, and since I'm doing this, and we do this in one arena of life, and then we try to justify it in another arena of life. We don't mean no harm. We just human. But God somehow believes he's worthy of our treasure. You mean to tell me that God, who created us and expects us to worship him, wants our time, our talent, and our treasure? No. The audacity of God. He somehow believes that he's worth every arena of your life. So we say, well, I can do it in other ways. But God seems to think that can't be true. God seems to think that he somehow is worthy of every arena of our lives. And intuitively, though, we understand this. Let me. Husband and wife. Husband comes in and he talks to his wife. He says, look, honey, you know what? I'm no longer going to bring my check to the house. Not going to do it. Now, how would you ladies feel about that? Oh, y'all going to say next? Right. I understand. You're going to say, oh, no. See, but he's going to say, but I'm going to give in other ways. Matter of fact, honey, when you're tired, I'm going to rub your feet. I'm going to wash your clothes. We're saying we want all of you in this thing. We marry someone. What are we going to tell them? It's all right. You just give in other ways. That's all right. No. Because intuitively we understand. It's all or nothing, baby. We understand that here. Amen. In this arena. But we can't understand that with God. Bring up 2 Corinthians 8 and 7. Bring it on the screen. This is what Paul says when he talks about the grace of giving. Paul says that we are to excel. He says even though you've excelled in all of these other gifts, he says you excel in knowledge, you excel in speech, you excel in love. He says, Paul, that says you've excelled in all of these things have been kindled in your life. He says, just as you abound in faith and in language, what is it? In speech and in utterance and knowledge and earnesty and love. He says that has been kindled and inspired in you. He says also that you abound how? In the grace of God. Paul says, God wants all of it. So we say, well, we got another little thing about giving, and it's suspicious. I don't make enough to give. Okay. We say, well, I don't make enough. Last week I told you about the widow's mite. There was never a time we should never give anything. I even told you about what if your job reduced your salary by 10%, would you still make it work? All of you said, we'll make it work. Make it work. We say, hey, I don't make enough to give. Typically, that has to do with priority and reorganization. Priority and reorganization. See, it's just, hey, you have to reorganize some things in your life. Because there are some things that we look at, that we do in our life, we make decisions without the tithe in mind. And therefore, we buy maybe larger homes or more cars, and those things will tend to take away from the tithe, and we have to use them in order to make our daily lives function. And so when we make our decisions on what we do, where we go, what we buy, the vacations that we have, we do them without the tithe in mind, and therefore we begin to cut into that resource that should be ours. So we say, well, I don't have enough. And some of us, we can go home tonight and reprioritize, reorganize in just a matter of moments. Do that with no problem. But that was the thing that was going on, and Malachi was addressing this thing with him. And so we may say, okay, well, you know what? I make too much money. And you say, one thing, I don't make enough. One may say, I make too much money. Make too much. I can't envision giving $9,000. I make $90,000. I can't envision giving $9,000 to God. It's crazy. That's got to be out your mind. So we let our human wisdom determine what it is we should give to God, because we feel, hey, that's too much. Because we've got a standard, a number that we've set in our minds, and in our minds we're saying that's it, and it shouldn't go beyond that. And so when God moves you from a salary of $20,000 and you're saying about $100 a month, that's about right. You're going, that's about right. we make our human wisdom, and then God bumps you up to 90,000. We go, oh, wait a minute now. Does anybody give $9,000 a year? We can't fathom that. And so we say, well, we make too much money to give to God. Okay, well, let me tell you about a guy named James D. Kennedy. And he went to Peter Marshall. Peter Marshall was the U.S. Treasurer at this time. James D. Kennedy went to Peter Marshall. He said, Peter Marshall, Reverend Dr. Peter Marshall, I got a problem. Dr. James D. Kennedy says, look, here's my problem. When I was first coming out of college, I didn't have a problem. And he said, give it to God. Matter of fact, I was coming out, I made about $40,000, Dr. Marshall, and while I was making all this money, I was giving to God. He said, but now, he said, Dr. Marshall, I'm in the six figures. And he says, now that I'm in the six figures, I can't fathom giving this much money to God. He said, I just can't seem to fathom it. So Dr. Marshall, and all of his wisdom, he says, I think I understand exactly what you're going. I understand what the problem you have. He says, how about this? Why don't we just pray? So Dr. Marshall, see, he took him by the hand. And he said, let's go to God in prayer. And he goes, yes, Dr. Marshall, I'm all for that. Let's go to God in prayer. Dr. Marshall began to pray, Lord, you're a good God. Lord, you're a mighty God. Then Dr. Marshall then said, Lord, would you take this man's salary down to the point in which he can tithe? So you say, well, the thing is, we ask God to give us more, and we can envision God giving us more, but we can't envision giving God more. So we say, God, bless us, provide more. And when God does, we say, I can't. It's too much now. I can't do it. See, when you encounter God, but it changes your perspective. Remember Zacchaeus? The moment he encountered God, Zacchaeus turned and said, I'm going to give half my stuff over. Zacchaeus. See, these are the giving suspicions. See, to understand the what, last time we did look the giving storehouse. Look, I'm going to give it to you like this. I'm going to sit down. We may say, Malachi was telling them, he says, look, bring everything you have to the storehouse. Now let me explain what they were doing. They would take their tithes, their offering, they would take them into the storehouse of God. They would bring their animals, they would bring their plants, they would bring their money, they would bring all their resources at 10%, and then they would give those into the storehouse of God. Now, from the storehouse, what they would do is they would distribute out all of those things for those who were widows, those who were poor, those that were less fortunate. See, and this is how they were distributing out to the priest, the Levite. So they were taking care of the temple, the sanctuary. All of those things were being taken care of from the storehouse. So this is why Malachi was telling them, you need to bring it all to the storehouse of God, so that in the storehouse of God, God can have those things distributed out to everybody that needs it. Makes sense. So when people did that, we say, well, how is the tithe to be used? Well, this is how the tithe is to be used. We take it into the storehouse of God. Now the local church becomes the storehouse of God. So the local church is where the tithe then is to be sent. And therefore it is the storehouse of God. And in the storehouse of God, then God distributes those resources out to where they need to be based on people who need clothing, women that are less fortunate, things that are going on within the church, benevolence, the life, taking care of the saints. Those type of things are done from the storehouse, which is the local church today. So when he was telling them, he says, bring your tithe so that the house of God will be the local storehouse that is filled, so it will be able to take care of the business for the people. Amen. That's how the tithe is. So this is why we understand in the word of giving that the giving goes to the storehouse. And when it goes to the storehouse, We say, well, can I give my tithe to other places? Like, I want to give to the United Way, Salvation Army. I want to give to other resources and stuff like that. Hey, all of that, I don't want to discourage any of that giving. That giving is great. But when it comes to the tithe, he says that needs to go to the local storehouse or the local church in which you're being led, which you're being fed, which those things are going on, and you can see the work of the ministry happen. That's the difference. Now, since that's the difference, he says, I want you to then understand the what of giving, and that means bringing those gifts then unto the storehouse of God. Then we say, okay, why does it take so much money for the church to operate? Why does, after all, at the church, you just bring in and, get a preacher a little change or something like that and let him move him on his way, It shouldn't take that much money for the church to run. See, we'll say these things. So why would I want to bring it there? And it shouldn't really take that much for the church to operate. And you say, last week I told you about, well, if we bring our tithe into the storehouse, and sometimes there was unscrupulous leaders. And I told you I was sorry about that. That sometimes those things happen. But then I talked to you about where our deposits are being made when we come to the local storehouse. We're making a deposit physically and we're making a deposit spiritually. So then we say, well, why does it take so much money to operate in the church? Okay. Those are very good questions when you bring your tithe to the storehouse. Okay. Well, there was an older lady and a younger lady. The younger lady just had a baby. Had the baby in her arms. Approaches the older lady, sat down beside her, and she began to tell her problems that she had with the baby. She said, this baby, and began to complain that this baby costs a lot as far as in milk, in diapers. Says, I'm not working because I have to keep and take care of the baby. When we go somewhere, daycare, babysitters, this baby costs a lot of money. And she was telling the older lady this. The older lady was sitting, listening at her complaints about how much this baby cost. The older lady then, after she had stopped, says, I have a son. Said when they become teenagers, she said they even get more expensive. She didn't help, she fed into it. She said they get more expensive. They want some of the designer jeans and shoes and different things like that. She said they get more expensive. Then she turns and she says, you know what? But my son died. She said now that he's dead, he doesn't cost me anything. Doesn't cost me a dime. See, you were complaining about life. But my son is dead. Doesn't cost me anything. See, the thing is when you go to the storehouse and you come into the church and you see worship going on, staff, and you see things being done for poor and less fortunate, that means there's life there in the church. That means ministry is going on. That means the church is alive. That's what that means. So you say, why does it cost so much? Because we're alive. That's why. We're not dead. And so sometimes that's hard for people to understand. Because they've come from a situation in which everything has been dead. So then they walk into something that is alive and they can't understand. Why does it cost so much? Because we're alive. Life is going on. And because life is going on, it costs. Listen, I'm going to get out here. I'm going to get out here. But life is taking place. See, I've challenged you over the last week. I said, look, if you decide to give a tithe and you decide to give to the Lord rhythmically and consistently over the next 90 days, take the challenge. And if you say God doesn't do anything for you, we give you your money back, let's tally it up plus 10%. The church given to you to try God. To try God. Let me wrap it up with this. These bananas. You know, there's 9 green, 1 yellow. Now God tells us that you can do anything you want with these 9. Anything you want. You can buy your car, buy your home, go wherever you want, take as many vacations as you want. See, and as we close, God said, look, with these 9 bananas, you can go to Six Flags, Fiesta, Texas. You can fly to Florida, go to Disneyland. You can do whatever you want with these 9 bananas. But God says, I just want 1 banana. 1 banana. And see, so what happens is we see God's banana and we begin to take a bite out. You know, we start to eat on God's banana. You know, we say, you know, I'm gonna go to the Beyonce concert. We take a bite out of God's banana. And we close, Brother Sean. We biting on God's banana. We tend to continue to take bites out of God's banana. God said you can do anything you want with these 9 bananas. But this 1 banana, God said, this is the one I want. But then we got other things going on. We said we're going to buy us a little bit more house, a little bit more car. Oh, yeah, that's good now. You good. That's good. Buy a little more house, more car. What's some other ways that we take bites out of God's banana? What's some other ways? You guys give me some. What is it? Shopping, yeah. We didn't take a bite. Good bite, y'all. Good bite. God banana. Y'all don't know? What? No. Wait. Wait a minute. So, getting your toes done. We're going to take a bite because everybody needs to get the toes done. Everybody. We want to get the toes done. Everybody get the toes done. And we're going to do one for the hair too. No, everybody. We want to put your toes in your hair. You got to get toes. Try your toes. Hop. There you go. Oh, we taking bites out of God's banana. We taking bites out of God's banana. And then when we look around and we're not careful, we've eaten all of God's banana with our stuff. And then we'll turn around and then this is what we sacrifice to God. A pig. And we go, that's what we give you, God. Because we've steady biting his banana. God deserves more than simply an empty peel of a banana. God deserves a lot more. But you get the point. When we take out of God, we're taking from God. And that's what we offer him. An empty banana. God wants more than that. Think about the life he's given you. The breath, the fact that he's waking you up. The job that you have, the resources he's given, all of that's God. And the audacity of him is to want you to leave his 1 banana alone and bring that to him. Let's stand on your feet. Let's close.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the sermon and encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. There, you will receive even more encouraging words from Pastor Tim. Remember, in addition to the videos, with a simple registration, you can receive the Life Notes. Pastor's outline and scripture references for his sermons will come directly to your inbox each week. Thank you again for watching. You are always invited to attend our morning worship services every Sunday morning starting at 10 a.m. Bible studies are Wednesday evenings starting at 6:30. You've been listening to Pastor Timothy Jones of Rock Bridge Church, Allen, Texas, where we follow the Go MC mission: God, others, ministry, and community.